If you're a capable and intelligent woman in a marriage that is quietly draining you, sucking your soul dry, this video is for you. I'm sure you've heard the advice, just leave. Why do you put up with this? Let's assume those are well-meaning people, okay? But those comments usually come from people who simply don't understand the complexity of your life. Maybe it's shared children, and you don't want to go into that custody arrangement where your children are vulnerable to your husband without your oversight. Maybe your finances are deeply entwined. Maybe leaving would upend everything you've built, a shared business or something like that, or just the enormous financial hit that women take in divorce. Or maybe, very honestly, you're still trying to understand what's actually happening and curious is there any fix besides just leaving. So if that's you, I want to say this clearly. Staying does not mean you're weak and you should be stronger. It means that your situation is complex. And today, in this video, we're not talking about whether you should leave or not. I'm certainly not here to run your life and give you advice. We're talking about how to protect your clarity, how to protect your nervous system and your sense of self, even while you're still in the marriage, and perhaps deciding, should I stay or should I go? Before we go further, a quick note. If this kind of content helps you feel steadier or less alone, please click like and click the subscribe button. That helps more women find this work when they need it. It also lets you know when there's a new video released on this channel. Here's the shift that most strong women struggle with at first. It's called radical acceptance, and it's not acceptance of mistreatment. It's acceptance of reality. You may have spent years explaining, adjusting, softening your tone, choosing your words more carefully, hoping that this time you'll be understood. That effort is exhausting. And radical acceptance means recognizing that your partner, sit down for this, may never fully see you, validate you, or change the way that you've hoped. And paradoxically, while this feels a tremendous grief moment, it is actually where your power begins. Because when you stop investing energy in attempting to get through to him and change him, then you're reclaiming an enormous amount of energy for yourself and your well-being. So radical acceptance, I grew up in Canada, where in the wintertime it's brutally cold, and sometimes we wanted to go places, but the weather simply didn't allow it, whether it was a blizzard, freezing rain, or just bone-chilling cold temperatures. And so we would look out the window, we'd look at the weather forecast and say, well, we were thinking of going cross-country skiing today, but I guess we're not going, right? It is grief, but it's also freedom and liberty because we've stopped fighting against things that are immovable objects, like the weather and like your husband. So that's radical acceptance. So how do we do that? I'm going to list a number of skills, very practical skills that you can do, and we help women with implementing these skills in our Detox Your Marriage coaching. So the first one is reclaim your mind, taking back ownership of your mind. It sounds ridiculous, but that's really what this is about. Many women in difficult marriages, they slowly lose confidence in their own perceptions. And that's not weakness of mind. That is just a predictable outcome of long-term emotional invalidation. So the first practice is learning to question, actually interrogate your own self-doubt rather than your reality. See, when a harsh thought appears in your mind, pause and ask, wait a minute, give me a moment, where did this belief come from? That I'm too sensitive or I'm overthinking. What evidence, what data actually supports this thought? And what would I say to a woman I deeply respected in this situation? That one is gold. See, this is how you begin restoring self-trust, quietly and steadily from the inside out. Okay, here's skill number 2. I call it regulate before you respond, or respond instead of react. Difficult marriages often train women to stay emotionally on edge for their own survival, for their own sanity. And so your body's always preparing for the next reaction, the next mood shift, the next comment. And that's a nervous system issue. That's not a willpower issue. So grounding practices like slow breathing, sensory awareness, brief movement helps your body become back to safety before you engage with that thing. And so from a calmer perspective, you're going to be less reactive, you're going to be clearer in your thinking, and subsequently far harder to destabilize. I want to be clear, this is not about detaching, this is not about going gray rock, going numb, going immune. It's about being rooted, being grounded in your own felt sense, your own reality. Now, ready for skill 3? Skill 3, I call it healing the parts that learned to endure, to survive. Many strong women learned early in life to endure quietly, don't put up a fuss, to stay composed, and to be the reasonable one. Does that ring a bell? Inside there may be parts of you that feel scared and unseen and deeply tired, that have never really got nurturance. Importantly, healing does not require pushing those parts away. In fact, that is anti-healing. Healing requires listening to those parts. So, for example, you may gently say, there's a part of me that feels alone right now, abandoned. And that makes sense right now, given what's going on around me. Right? So when you begin offering yourself that validation that you've been trying to get externally, that's when something shifts. You actually become less dependent on his approval for your stability. Just when you hear me say that, I'm going to say that again. When you begin offering yourself the validation that you've been trying to get externally, that's when something shifts. You become less dependent on his approval for your okayness. Can you imagine how liberating that's going to be? Huge. Skill number 4, rebuild a life that is your life. See, one of the quiet dangers of a difficult marriage is how small the world becomes, how things shrink. So it's important to begin expanding your world and your life intentionally. Cultivate relationships outside the home where you don't have to explain yourself. Return to those interests that used to make you feel you rather than a role that you're performing. This is not selfishness. It's funny that I say that, hey? This is not selfishness. This is self-care. This is soul care. Because the stronger your internal and external support system becomes, the less power this dysfunctional marriage dynamic has holding over your identity. So this work is not about changing your husband, although that is a collateral effect of you doing what I've just described in these skills. But primarily and directly, this work is about changing your experience of yourself within this marriage. So if you've ever thought, intellectually I understand what's happening, but something hasn't fully settled in my body, I just can't implement the boundaries that the Cloud and Townsend book talks about. I'm just not able to say no when I want to say no, although I know I should say no. That's often a nervous system issue. It's not a lack of strength or moral resolve or anything like that. This is exactly why I wrote the Trauma Recovery Blueprint as a calm, practical guide for women to understand how healing actually unfolds. So you'll find a link below If you'd like to explore the Trauma Recovery Blueprint, we've also created a workbook to go alongside that book. And before you go, please click the like, click the subscribe. That helps this material reach other women who feel strong on the outside at work, but exhausted on the inside. So above all else, as my wife and partner Damaris says, love yourself more than ever. Take care of yourself and trust that you're not imagining this and you're not alone. We have your back.